Have you ever poured your heart into a crochet project only to have people react meh? You are absolutely not alone. If you're one of those people who, like me, tries so hard not to take things to heart but totally internalizes all of it, then this is the video for you. I'm going to talk you through how I personally deal with negative feedback, or fail to deal with negative feedback, and to deal with constructive criticism, to take it on board when it's appropriate, and to throw it into my mind bin when it isn't. Hopefully not to leave it to fester there. There are actually kind of a few different types of negative feedback, and the first one, let's just get it out the way, it's that good old constructive criticism. It's when someone thinks that they're being helpful, that is specific, it's focusing on areas that you can improve, and it's actionable. It's something you can actually do something about, even if it's not in this project, then in the next project that comes up. It has a purpose, I suppose, and it points you in a direction to do better next time. And I'm not saying that constructive criticism doesn't hurt sometimes, because for me it hurts most of the time. I can listen to what someone's saying and I can go, yeah, that's such a good point, thank you very much, and inside it's still a dagger in my heart. But I can, I can live with that dagger because it is actually one that has a purpose. Unlike trolling. Trolling is essentially unhelpful feedback. It is feedback that is potentially designed just to hurt you. Maybe they're trying to make you feel worse to make them feel better. Maybe they're just in a bad mood. Maybe they're just not a nice person. It's feedback along the lines of, that's ugly, that's stupid, that looks a bit creepy. It's nasty. It's just a person being mean for the sake of being mean. And honestly, if there is nothing where there is an area for improvement and it's just a person being mean, then we all know that all they're doing is saying, I'm not a nice person, but putting a different verbal spin on it. It doesn't matter what horrible people say about you because they're just horrible. Their opinions don't matter. They're not important. I am so much better at dealing with these trolly comments than I actually am at dealing with constructive criticism. If someone is just mean or they're just wrong, which they often are, then that's fine. I can pick that up and I can throw it out my brain window. It's gone. I don't have to think about it or deal with it anymore. When it hurts me is when there's some truth to it. And that is such a different scenario, which we'll chat about in a minute after talking about the third type of feedback, which is just subjective preferences. Some people like things and other people don't like them. You see this so often with color palettes and with fibers. Some of us really like a particular yarn fiber, like I am crazy about merino wool. It is totally my favorite. And other people just don't like them. Some people have incredibly strong feelings about acrylic yarns, and they're never going to love your project when you've used an acrylic yarn because they just don't like acrylic yarns. Now, frankly, in that scenario, they could have just kept their mouth shut. They didn't need to share their opinion of you, but they did. Okay, it's out there. But you can also take a breath and accept that that is their subjective opinion and it's different to yours. They don't like bright, bold, geometric shapes. They prefer sort of whimsical, wistful, rustic looks. That's great. Them going, I wish it was more boho. That's a word, right? Bohemian, flowery and floaty, that's a subjective preference. That's fine, that's their own preference. Maybe it would have been nice if they didn't share it with you, but we'd hope that we don't internalize that and take that on as negative feedback because it is just their opinion. And what's really important about subjective preferences, it's much like the trolls of the previous section, there's no action to be taken. You're not going to change your personal preferences. You're not going to change what you like to make, especially if you're just making it for yourself. That's fine. You can stick a pin in that because it doesn't matter if someone has a different opinion to you. You don't need to change anything. So here's what I try, and let's be clear, try to do when I receive negative feedback, which as a crochet pattern designer and someone who puts myself on YouTube and shares my patterns for free and sells my patterns, I do get some negative feedback sometimes. And I can see 100 nice things about what I've made, and someone says something not nice, and that is all I'm going to think about for the next 3 days. So what I try really, really hard to do now is, first of all, take a breath. Not just instantly verbalize my response to the feedback, whether I'm typing it or I'm saying it to somebody that I'm just talking to. I take a moment. I then ask myself whether this feedback is constructive, unhelpful, or subjective. Is this person trying to help me do better next time or to improve a current project? Or are they just being mean Or is their opinion just different to mine? Because that's fine too, and we do all have different opinions, and my goodness, would crochet be a boring world if all of us had the exact same ideas and tastes, right? It's great that we have different opinions. I don't always want to hear them. And then when I've decided which of those boxes it falls into, that dictates my response, or most importantly, my lack of response. If someone says something that is just mean, if they say it online, we've got choices, haven't we? We can ignore them, or we can respond. But personally, what I have learned is that if someone is just being mean for the sake of being mean, what they want is for you to respond to them. They want you to go, oh no, I'm hurt, or here's why you're wrong, and they want to start a dialogue with you, and they want it to be a negative dialogue. Don't give them that. Don't give them the satisfaction. From years of experience dealing with feedback of all kinds of natures, it never ends well if someone is just being nasty and you try to answer them. There's so often just no point. You're just giving them what they want. Don't give it to them. Unless you're in a fighting mood. If it is a subjective difference, then there is some possibility for going, oh, that's really interesting you feel that way. I still feel this way. And then that's a little bit of a friendly dialogue, and then you can move on. Or again, you can just ignore it. Just for those of you who, like me on some occasions, still do find it difficult when someone has a different taste and my thing's not to their taste, it still hurts a little bit, even though I know it shouldn't. Do try to remember that it isn't a judgment on you that they like a different thing. However, if you think that maybe this is designed to be taken as constructive criticism rather than someone picking a fight, then what you can say is, okay, so is there truth to what they're saying? And is there something I can learn from this or take away from it? And that is something that I still find difficult, but that over the years I have managed to swallow my pride and to learn from. And I have got some really, really stark improvements to some of the things that I have done based on constructive, friendly comments that I have got about my projects. In particular, one of the ones that leaps to mind is to do with the placement of safety eyes. Way back, someone put a message under one of my patterns suggesting that the toy might look even better if I tied the safety eyes together at the back to make them inset into the head more. Oh, game changer. It's just not something I had come across before, and it really does add this slightly sculptural shape to the toys, and I use it to this day in so many of my projects. It's made such a difference. And the thing is that they weren't saying your toy's bad, they were saying, hey, your toy's good, and here's a thing that might make it even better next time. Which is great. Something that I am trying really hard to do now is to focus on the positive. Because if you take a step back, whether it's on social media or on Instagram or Facebook or here on YouTube or in real life with your family and friends, you will, if you take a step back, realize that most of the feedback you get is positive. And I think that we are designed evolutionarily as humans to take more notice of bad things because it's a safety thing, right? It's not for crochet. We all know that in our sensible brains, but the animalistic, prehistoric part of us is designed, we're hardwired to look at those negatives as if they're more important, but they're actually not. I now try so hard to focus on the positives, especially when we're doing something that is intrinsically tied to our self-confidence. I don't know about you, but for me, that's totally true of anything crafty or arty I do. I put so much of myself into it that I can't help but be hurt when something negative's said. And if it's just someone being mean, then just think about all the nice things and try not to think about the mean thing. There's nothing you can do. Don't keep going back and looking at it. That's not helpful. I'm talking to me here. Don't keep going back and looking at it. Me? Really? Just stop. Walk away, ignore, remove if it's particularly vile, which occasionally it is. It's the internet, it's a sketchy place. However, we can, with the constructive criticism things, we can take something from them to improve in future, just like I did with the settings with the eyes. Allow yourself to say, okay, they've got a point there. Is that something I can change in future? You can't change the past as much as all of us would want to on occasions. Don't beat yourself up for the projects that you've already made. Take the snippets of useful information out of the gushed feedback and apply it in future if you need to. Sometimes I even make a note of an idea that someone's had or suggestion in my notebook. I will write down a bit of their feedback so that I can remember it if it's constructive and helpful, which it sometimes is. But also remember that even if feedback is intended to be constructive, you don't have to take it on board if you don't want to. It's fine to say, hey, there's some feedback. that kind of probably applies to me, but meh, not going to do anything about it this time. And that's fine too. You don't have to listen to what people say to you. This is meant to be fun, and that's the most important part. Designing toys makes me incredibly happy. It brings me a great amount of joy. It's the only thing I do at the moment that's truly like arty. I find it very sculptural. I work much better in 3 dimensions than 2, and it brings me so much joy to be creative and to make unique things. And not everybody is going to like them all the time, and not everybody is going to be very good about giving their feedback in a positive way. Basically, the point I'm trying to make here is that sometimes you'll get feedback and sometimes it will be useful, but most of the time it won't. Sometimes it will be horrible, but most of the time it will be lovely. And it is up to you what you do with that feedback, and it should not define how you feel about the thing you have made. If you liked what you had made when you created it, then that's awesome. Even if a room full of nasty people stood up and shouted about how rubbish it was, that shouldn't make any difference. I know it does, and I know it hurts because it hurts me. But we have to take a deep breath. We have to look at whether people are trying to be helpful and nice, and if they are, then take what we can from it if we want to. And otherwise, we just need to stick our fingers in our ears and shout la 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 in their faces, because this is meant to be fun. And if you don't find the negative feedback is something that you're in a position that you can cope with right now, it's okay to not share what you're making for a while, or even ever. I have projects that I've made that I really like, but they are not up to my normal standard, and you won't see them on this channel. Constructive criticism can come from very unexpected corners, and it can cut really deep, but it's how you deal with it within yourself that actually matters. And I am trying so hard these days not to be hurt by things that should not hurt me. If you're really good at dealing with constructive criticism or negative feedback of any kind, please tell me, what are your tips? What do you do that I don't do? Do you go in guns blazing and defend yourself to the big mean trolls of the internet? Do you shake your proverbial finger at your family members when they stick their foot in it? Or do you bite your lip and try not to internalize the sadness too much? I'd love to know how you deal with it. I will see you in the comments section below, and I can't wait to chat to you there.